It's been a pretty amazing thing to watch the progress of the food sharing project. I think back to my initial involvement, and the project started with a very small group of people who were concerned about seeing children in particular sites who were hungry. And so it became a bit of a stopgap. All right, at this school, we really need to feed these kids. So what if we get some cereal and some milk and some toast and some cheese and some juice for this school, and maybe we can look after this group of children. Oh, here's a group at another school. We need to look after them. And then it became obvious that this was much bigger. This problem was not site specific. It was almost everywhere. And so it happened that the little group that started out became organized, applied for a charitable number, and formed a board of directors. Now, it was interesting because the initial board of directors really came from the employee groups of the Frontenac County Board of Education. At that time, the chair of the board was Al Edmonds, who was a trustee with the Frontenac County Board. And so our idea was that perhaps we could have a payroll deduction plan within the board. But of course, in order to do that, we would have to get all of the employee groups to agree to that. And so we met with those people, and at that time, I was the president of the Frontenac County Women Teachers Association. And so I agreed to be the representative for the elementary teachers on the board. There was a representative from OSSTF, from CUPE, all of the other employee groups. And so we ran this payroll deduction plan, and that was very successful because the people who worked in schools realized the need. And so many people donated money, and it was a simple way to do it. Then we realized that the program was getting bigger and bigger, and so we expanded the board because there were some members of the community who were willing to help us, and really they were friends of Al Edmonds. I think of Charlie Jeffs, who was a retired accountant, and he was our treasurer at that time, and he was a very, very dedicated individual, and so he gave us financial advice. And he was wonderful and gave us a very detailed report every meeting, and he was highly committed. And the Frontenac County Board agreed that they would pay our coordinator if we would look after the project. So that really helped us because if we didn't have to pay the salary of the person, at that time it was a part-time person, and so if we didn't have to worry about paying that salary, then all of the money that people gave us could go to food and equipment. So that's what we did. And Al continued to chair the board. He was visually impaired, and so he donated his trustee stipend always to buying books for particular schools or giving money to the food sharing project. In 1995, Al passed away quite suddenly, and I was the vice chair at that time, and so I agreed to be the chair in view of his passing. And so for a number of years I chaired the board. I kept looking around for other people who might be willing to take that on, but I was not successful for a long time. Then, of course, you have to remember that the Frontenac County Board there was this great amalgamation of school boards. And so we had to make a really difficult decision about how we would manage, because we had always fed the children in the separate schools in the Kingston vicinity. And the Algonquin Lakeshore Board was going to be so huge, we knew we couldn't manage that whole board. And also, by combining with the Lennox and Addington Board, we wondered how we would ever do it. How would we get food to Cloyne? How would we possibly do that? And yet, we did not feel that we could say, well, unfortunately, you weren't part of the original Frontenac County Board, and so we can't feed the kids in your school. It wouldn't work. So we had to do quite a lot of reorganizing then. We had to get other people on board to help us with the transportation of the food, and the board courier really helped us, and then we got the bus drivers involved and all of that. And then Brenda Moore came along and agreed, and Brenda and I have been friends for a very long time, and she was equally committed to the project. And so she agreed to take over as chair, and we carried on. It was not without challenges, because there were so many schools then, and there was such a high demand, and we just could hardly imagine how we were ever going to manage it. And so we got involved with the United Way. And although we had funding from, it used to be called the Canadian Living Breakfast for Learning Fund, then again that funding model changed. And so for a while it seemed like every year we had to adapt to the new funding model from the province to get those funds, and of course our expenses were going up all the time. So it's been fairly labor intensive as the program has grown, but we've managed to do it only through the absolute dedication and commitment of our volunteers, our board of directors. Brenda has been fantastic in terms of taking on that leadership role. So all of the things that we have continued to do have kept us afloat, but that's a constant concern.